Major League Rugby has its first 100-cap player. Its first centurion, if you will. And his name is Dylan Fawsitt. Today, on this episode of the All-American Rugby Podcast, we're going to celebrate this milestone achievement, as well as catching up on all of the other MLR action that took place. There's also the small matter of the Vancouver Sevens, and we'll have a quick rundown of that as well. So let's get into it. Obviously, the big talking point in the MLR world, as it were, this week is Dylan Fawsitt's 100th appearance. The first player in the history of Major League Rugby to achieve that incredible milestone. The Butcher, as he's known, is an MLR original. He's been playing in the league right from its very first incarnation in 2018. Originally with the Colorado Raptors, before moving to New York, where he became an icon of Major League Rugby. Following the sad demise of Rugby New York, he moved on to the Chicago Hounds, helping to cement that team in the league and take them from strength to strength. In those 100 MLR appearances, he has scored a ridiculous 58 tries. He's the league's all-time leading try scorer as well. There's an absolutely insane strike rate for a hooker, for a front row forward. And he is absolutely doing his bit to promote the front row union. And as a fellow union member, I am very, very pleased about that. He even scored on his 100th cap. Because that's the kind of man he is, really. An incredible guy. A really hard-working, down-to-earth, family man who just happens to be a great rugby player. On top of all that, something else. And it's a magnificent achievement. Congratulations, Dylan. You absolutely deserve to be the guy to hit this first milestone, so well done to you. If you're listening to this, I'm not sure if you will or not, but, just in case he happens to be, we'll give that little shout out there. There is the possibility that he won't be the league's only century cap holder for very long. There's a few players still active in the league who will probably hit that milestone this season, provided they stay fit. Sam Windsor is the closest to him with 94 appearances, formerly of the Houston SaberCats, Rugby New York and the Seattle Seawolves, but he isn't playing in the league this year, so don't know if he's retired or not. Can't find any information about him or where his rugby career is at. So it's unlikely that he'll reach the 100, at least not this season. He may do in future years. Big Gus, Angus McClellan, though, of the Utah Warriors, he is sitting on 93 all-time appearances, as is JP Smith of the Seattle Seawolves. So I would expect both of them to get there this season. And then Moni Tonguia, Nola Gold's captain, is there on 90 caps as well, and presuming he'll be a mainstay of their squad as the club captain, I would imagine he will reach the 100 this season as well. So we could have 4, maybe more than that, Centurions by the end of this year. We'll just have to wait and see. But yeah, the Century Club is underway, and it's great to see. So we'll begin the main body of the show with our roundup of all the MLR action from round 2 this past weekend. The first game of the weekend under the Friday night lights saw Anthem Rugby Carolina host the San Diego Legion in the Queen City, Charlotte, North Carolina. Now, looking at the final score of 52-5 in favour of the visiting San Diego side, would suggest strongly that this game was an absolute kicking from start to finish, but that really wasn't the case at all. Certainly not for the first half anyway. The first 40 minutes, Anthem were, if not the better team, they were certainly more than holding their own. They put loads and loads of pressure on the San Diego defence, spent a lot of time. They weren't quite ahead. They were certainly very even in terms of territory and possession. They had chances, they had pressure that they built in the red zone, in San Diego's 22-metre zone. But they just couldn't convert that pressure into points. There was handling errors, or they ran out of players, they used all their numbers. They weren't quite able to convert that pressure and that territory and that hold on the game that they had into points on the scoreboard. They only scored one try. Through Eric Storty, outside centre, last year's #1 draft pick in the MLR college draft. Looks a real talent. Cap for the US Eagles before he even played a game of Major League Rugby. That's the level of talent that we're talking about with this kid, and he ran a great line off their number 10, Line Latu, to score Anthem's only points of the game. On the other hand, San Diego, as soon as they got into Anthem territory, Anthem's 22, they scored. They came away with tries. It seems like they were only in, Anthem's red zone, that 22-metre zone, on 4 occasions, and they came away with 4 tries from them. They were so clinical, and that's the thing that Anthem lacked really in the first half. The second half, by contrast, was an absolute procession from San Diego. They picked up another 26 points, another 4 tries, 3 conversions, and Anthem just completely ran out of steam. The Legion's superior quality, superior fitness, and more togetherness as a team really came to the fore in that second half, and it was, a bit of a whitewash, unfortunately. Anthem completely fell away. They ran out of players, or ran out of numbers on several occasions. Even when they had the ball, they weren't able to get bodies off the floor from one tackle to be ready for the next play. And ended up with the fly half, Line Latu, taking the ball into contact himself so many times, just having to run the ball up because he didn't have anybody to pass it to. And that's not really what you want in a game of top-class rugby. So Anthem still have work to do. Like, they should be encouraged by that first half, particularly compared to where they were at a week ago. But that second half performance leaves a lot to be desired, and they will have to go some and play for a full 80 minutes if they want to get their first ever win in Major League Rugby. They've lost every single game they've played in MLR across last season and the start of this. They need to start picking up, although they have had a huge turnover in players. Turnover? Same thing, I think, really. Only 13 of their current squad were there last season. They have 24 new players who joined the club this off-season. It's a ridiculous number of new faces to try and integrate into a squad, and they just haven't gelled together yet. But hopefully that would come. I would love to see them get their first win this season, and I will be, very much hoping they do so in the not-too-distant future, hopefully. For the Legion, they had a huge week of travel. They played last week away in Seattle and then had to go cross-country, coast to coast, over to Charlotte, North Carolina to take on Anthem. They played Legion on Sunday in round 1 and played Anthem on Friday night in round 2, so it was a fairly quick turnaround for them as well. Along with all that travel, the schedule for them is absolutely ridiculous, and we'll talk about it a bit more later on. But they showed the quality that they have. Again, they'll be looking to be a playoff team this year, and they've started the season really well. 2 bonus point wins, going back to back, which is exactly what they would have hoped for. Scrum half Richard Judd and Ethan Grayson, who eventually was awarded man of the match, started the game at fullback, moved into fly half, can play in the centre as well. Really versatile player, the Englishman Grayson. They were the 2 standout players on the day. Both started the season really well and will be looking to steer San Diego's fortunes as the league progresses. We'll fast forward to Sunday now, and it was the big one. Up first, Dylan Fawsitt, the Butcher's 100th cap for the Chicago Hounds, hosting the Utah Warriors in their first game of the season. And the Warriors came into this one very much looking to spoil the party, and they started off with an absolute bang. So much physicality, so much aggression. Former All Black Liam Coltman at hooker for the Warriors had the dream start to his MLR debut season, scoring a try after 90 seconds from a driving maul from a line out. It was the ideal start for the Warriors. Blake McKeary also got his MLR debut off to a flying start as well, with a try inside 5 minutes to put the Warriors 2 scores up. This game started off at an incredible rate of knots. There were 35 points scored in the first 20 minutes. Nate Augsburger pulled one back for Chicago following those 2 early scores for the Warriors. And it was maybe the weirdest try you'll ever see. Chicago were carrying the ball hard into the Warriors 22. It looked like the ball was about to be kind of stripped from the tackle. I'm not sure exactly which Warriors player it was, but ripped the ball off of the Chicago attacker, and it just popped into Augsburger's hands as he was kind of running a support line or ready to hit the ruck, and he just kind of jogged over the line. I think he was as surprised as anybody, kind of held up the ball like, whoa, look what I've got, before he dotted it down. Just, I suppose the US Eagle found himself in the right place at the right time, capitalised on a really unlucky break of the ball as it was ripped out through the tackle. It was, a very, very strange try. But that kind of brought Chicago back into the game. The Warriors have a new fly half this season, Samoan international D'Angelo Le'uila, and he had a fantastic first outing in Major League Rugby, converted both of those first 2 tries from more or less opposite sidelines from Coltman and McKeary, and then floated across an absolutely beautiful crossfield kick for Joe Mano to run onto to get his first score of the season. It was, absolutely on the money, that crossfield kick. Le'uila has a wand of a left foot, and looking forward to seeing more of him as this season progresses. However, Chicago hauled themselves back into it in the second half of the first half, after the water break at 20 minutes. Mason Flesh scored a try quickly first off, and then Dylan Fawsitt, of course, couldn't keep the big man down on his big day, scored a try, extended his record as MLR's top try scorer ever, and Adrian Carls's conversion levelled up the scores 21 each going into the halftime break. Scrum half Mitch Short got the go-ahead try for Chicago just after halftime. A couple of minutes into the second half, he managed to break down the short side and got over to put Chicago in front for the first time in the match. But the turning point of the game came a couple of minutes after that. Charlie Abel, the Chicago Hounds tight head prop, was sent off for a high tackle, no mitigation, red card. And while he was off the field and Chicago were down a man, the Warriors really took advantage of their extra player and of the numbers that they had. Matt Jensen and Spencer Jones both scored tries while the Hounds were down a player for that 20 minutes. I've already told you my feelings on the 20-minute red card. If you missed last week's episode, you should go back and listen to it for exactly how I feel about the 20-minute red card. I'm not a big fan, it's safe to say. But the Warriors took full advantage of that 20-minute spell to race into an unassailable lead. Both fly halves, Carlsa and Le'uila, traded penalties before Joe Mano scored another try late on in the day to seal the deal for the Warriors, get their season off to a fantastic start away from home, their first game of the year. A few new players there and a new expansive style of rugby that Utah are playing, and they'll be delighted with how it went on their first game, and spoiled Dylan Fawsitt's big day in the Chicago Hounds 100th match celebrations. Utah were something of an unknown quantity coming into this game as well. Obviously didn't play last week, not much in the way of pre-season in Major League Rugby, so weren't entirely sure how they were going to go. But I think a performance like this really makes a statement. It's put the whole league on notice. Everybody's going to be watching their backs for the Utah Warriors this year, I think, if they continue to play in this manner. They were really, really excellent. Chicago, however, discipline is becoming a real issue for them. That's 2 red cards in 2 games now to start off the season. Obviously, with Abel this week, they had a player sent off last week for 2 yellow cards, which is really unusual. This is becoming a pattern with them. Perhaps it's even, you could say, becoming a problem for the Hounds. It's something they will need to tidy up on. Like, yes, you want to be aggressive. Yes, you want to always be putting pressure on your opponent, but there is a line you can't cross that. Like, you've got to play hard, but you've got to play fair. And fair is not quite, they're not quite getting that balance right at the moment. So that's something that they'll be looking to work on and to improve as the season progresses, going into round 3 and beyond. Up next, we had an absolute cracker of a game way down south, the Miami Sharks against NOLA Gold. The Sharks managed to come out on top in this one by 30 points to 25, but not after a bit of a scare. The Gold started off this week like they finished in round 1, scoring 2 early tries from Canadian fullback Cooper Coates and flying Frenchman Xavier Mignot out in the wing. Got them up to a 14-point lead early doors. Dorian Jones kicking well again, as he did last week and as he has done for the Gold. Miami managed to claw their way back into the game with a Martin Elias penalty and a try from prop Alex Tucci. Not often we see the big men scoring tries, but he got there and he got it done. Again, traded penalties between Elias and Dorian Jones, putting NOLA 15-3 up at half-time. A 7-pointer under the sticks from flanker Manu Ardau put Miami in the lead for the first time in the game early in the second half, before a try from flanker Ben Bonasso, formerly again of New York, extended the lead even further later in the game. However, the Gold were to rally with another excellent solo try from Coates. Danced around to Miami defence to get in and score the try, which put NOLA back within a score late on through another Jones penalty. Although this was followed up pretty quickly by a yellow card for Ben Bonasso, and we just got more than a few shades of round 1, with Miami desperately trying to hold on to a lead in the later stages of the match. Elias had the chance to put the game beyond doubt. However, his penalty kick was disallowed as he took too long. The shot clock ran out. He timed out his kick, and you just wondered, you thought, oh no, here we go again. The Sharks are going to find a way to lose this from the jaws of victory. And yet, they just about managed to hold on, secured the ball at a ruck and kicked it away, making sure that they ran deep before they kicked the ball out rather than trying to box kick direct from the scrum. No risk of any charge down this week, as we saw last week. No repeat of last week's calamitous circumstance that saw them lose the game at the death. They managed to get it done this week. Well done, Sharks. You've learned from your mistakes, and that's all that we can ask for. The Gold, however, will be so disappointed to have lost this one, especially after the big lead that they'd built early on. They thought, they're continuing nicely here. They'd beaten Anthem last week, continued that form into this week, built themselves a healthy lead with a couple of good tries, trying to play wide, and the Sharks punched them up the middle, punched it up the guts and broke through. So yeah, Gold will be disappointed to have thrown away that early lead, but a significant lead. So there's things for them to work on as well. But is this kind of what the Gold are? Is this what they do? Like, they've been one of those teams for several years who kind of flattered to deceive. Like, you think they should be seeing these games out. They should be putting teams away, and they just don't quite get it done. Like, doesn't look like this year's going to be their year. Next year might be their year. Or maybe the year after, or the year after. It's kind of one of those things that kind of is self-perpetuating almost. Like, next year's always going to be their year, it feels like, unless or until they can start seeing out these games, seeing off these opposition, and grinding out the wins that they need to win. Great heart from the Sharks to claw their way back into this one, to fight it out and to get the win and to come away with that victory at the end, to hold on this time when it mattered. Although, again, this is something that they've They've done both weeks so far, both matches, round 2. They've given teams an early lead and fought their way back into the game. I'm not sure, in fact, I know they're not going to get away with giving teams a head start, particularly the better teams in the league, when they come up against a New England, a Sabercats, Utah, based on this week's performance. They're not going to get away with it against those teams, the bigger teams, the more successful teams. And they really need to start games better. They're finishing them okay, or they're certainly building into the games as they go. But yeah, they need to start better, and then they won't have this mad panic at the end that we've seen both weeks so far. But then we headed over to the West Coast again for the final match of the weekend, which saw RFC LA hosting the Houston Sabercats. I think I nailed that pronunciation this time. So the visitors took the lead early on when an M. Schumacher raced over the line to put the Sabercats in pole position. Yes, I'm well aware that that's a terrible pun, but yes, I am going to go with it. Van Vught equalised for Los Angeles, though, before a slick move heavily involving Bill Meeks, the Australian centre, put Seth Purdy over in the corner to put Los Angeles in front. Notably, both tries were scored right beside the posts rather than directly underneath for the automatic 7. They instead chose to score beside the post when they could have gone underneath to allow fly half Christian Lealiafano to kick the goals rather than just accept the automatic 7-point tries. I thought that was kind of unusual, but quite cool. Make sure the fly half gets the points on the board rather than the 7-point try. Thought that was quite interesting. A little grubber kick through the line again from Meeks, getting his second assist of the day. Saw Nick Chan score his first try of the season, the LA outside centre. Lealiafano again knocked over the conversion on that one. Before the Sabercats skipper, Nathan Den Hoot, big second row, was able to burrow his way over the line from short range, pick and go off the side of a ruck to score to pull one back for the Cats before another Van Vught try secured the bonus point for LA before the halftime break. Lealiafano again successful off the tee to give a 28-12 lead to Los Angeles heading into halftime. It was all Houston in the second half, though. Sam Tuifua scored an incredible athletic, diving, twisting finish in the corner for his second try in as many games to pull the Cats back into this one and really kick off their second half revival. Jeremy Misilangalu, the Fijian left winger known as the Missile, which is a lot easier to say, got another try, and then Justin Basson barged his way over from close range as well. Davy Kutzer added the extras to put the Cats 38-28 in front. Declan Leaney was then sent off for Los Angeles for a second yellow card. They said it's not something we normally see in rugby, but it's happened twice in the opening 2 rounds of MLR this season. I'm not sure if this is the way that refs are refereeing in America right now, or if it's just pure coincidence. But it's a really, really unusual thing to happen in world rugby in general. So a bit of a surprise to see that happen 2 weeks in a row. And with LA really chasing the game in the final few minutes, they really started to push the envelope a little bit, trying to sling the ball wide. One of these long floaty passes was intercepted by Houston and US Eagles centre Dom Aquina to race 80 metres to score under the sticks, bringing the automatic 7-pointer to secure a 45-28 victory for the Sabercats. 33 unanswered points scored in the second half of this game. An incredible turnaround. Unexpected, I think, to see the Sabercats win it quite so convincingly. And yet, a total implosion from Los Angeles in that second half after a pretty electric first 40. They scored some really good tries, were playing some really good stuff. That attacking game that we kind of expect from them was all to the fore in the first half, and then completely disappeared in the second. Houston, though, despite being called the Sabre Cats, are a really dogged, resilient team that never stop. They never ever give up. They're always relentlessly driving forward through the game. Like, you cannot switch off for a moment against them, because they will play for that full 80 minutes. Pote Human has really, really driven that into them. And all credit to them. Like, it was a real show of heart and spirit and quality from the Sabercats this week. And it maybe makes my prediction last week of LA being in the MLR Grand Final, maybe makes that look a little bit premature and a bit silly. But we'll see what happens over the course of the rest of the season. So that was it for round 2. Some really, really good games. Not enough good games, but some really good ones. Looking ahead to round 3 coming up this weekend, and we've got a full complement of fixtures once again. On Friday night, it's another battle of the southeast corner, or the eastern seaboard. Anthem hosting the Miami Sharks at Mecklenburg County Sportsplex. Anthem have been playing their home games so far at the American Legion Stadium in Charlotte, which has looked like a really good ground, maybe slightly too big for where they're at the moment. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what Mecklenburg looks like in contrast. Hopefully it's a decent setup that they've got there. That one kicks off at 7:30 Eastern Time, which is midnight on Friday night, Saturday morning if you're here in the UK. Then into Saturday's games, Old Glory DC hosting San Diego Legion at the Maryland Soccerplex. That's 4 p.m. Eastern. Legion on the road again. Also, again, East Coast, so full cross-country for them. We'll talk about their scheduling a little bit later on. At 4 p.m. Eastern or 9 p.m. UK time. At the same time, the Utah Warriors have their home opener against Nola Gold at Zions Bank Stadium. 4 p.m. Eastern, 9 p.m. UK time. And then the final Saturday game is the Houston Sabercats taking on the Seattle Seawolves. I'm repping them right now, as you can see if you're watching this on YouTube. That kicks off at 8 p.m. Eastern, 1 a.m. Sunday morning UK time. And then one game on Sunday, Chicago Hounds hosting the reigning defending MLR champions, the New England Free Jacks, back in action at SeatGeek Stadium. That kicks off 2 p.m. Eastern, or a very convenient 7 p.m. UK time. So I imagine I'll actually be able to watch that one live, which will be lovely. So we'll have a quick shakedown now of the sevens from Vancouver. Got to say, it wasn't a vintage weekend for either of the US Eagles teams in action on the World Sevens circuit this weekend. Really quite disappointing performances, I think it would have to be said. The men's team lost all 3 of their pool games on day 1, losing to Spain, who finished 3rd in the tournament overall, Fiji, who are stalwarts of the Sevens World Series, and also to Uruguay, which put them into the 9th place semi-finals, where they did go on to beat Ireland, which was good, and then scraped past Uruguay, playing them for the second time in the weekend in that 9th place playoff by a single point, 22-21. They won the match to pick up 4 series points on the overall ladder. So yeah, disappointing 9th place finish for the men. The women only fared a little bit better with pool victories over China and Ireland before a bit of a trouncing 37-0 at the hands of the overall tournament winners, New Zealand Black Ferns. They then lost to Japan in the Cup quarterfinals, and then also to hosts Canada in the 7th place playoff, so 8th overall for the women's team. It gave them 6 ranking points, leaving them 4th overall still in the World Series standings overall. Just 2 points now ahead of Japan, though, and 4 ahead of Canada, while they remain 6 adrift of France, who sit in that third position, which will give them a bronze medal for the series. So, still lots to play for. Like the women's team's still in with a chance of medaling in the World Sevens series this year at least, which has to be the aim for now on. The men, however, are languishing down in 11th out of 12 in the men's rankings overall. Just Ireland beneath them. They have a very, very sad total of 9 series points on the ladder. They're a massive 23 adrift of safety from the dreaded relegation playoffs, which will come at the end of the season if they don't get out of this bottom 4, and they've got some serious work to do so to make up that gap. I honestly can't see it happen. The next event on the World Sevens Series is in Hong Kong, taking place from the 28th to the 30th of March, and there is obviously loads for both teams to play for, and more than enough to be working on this month in preparation for that tournament. But yeah, we'll be back to report on it in a month's time. We shall finish up today with the shit list, our roundup of the drizzling shit and the shit hot from this last week. I'll be honest, I do want a better name for this segment. If you have any ideas for that, please let us know. You can add comments on YouTube or on Spotify if that's the platform you listen to, or you can get in touch with us on our social media. We're on Instagram at All American Rugby Pod. But yeah, I think we should start with the drizzling shit, just so we can finish on a bit of a high. Hopefully everyone can go home happy. So, yeah, the first couple of points on our drizzling shits this week are kind of related to each other. First one that we'll get into is MLR's scheduling. We've just had round to week 2 of the brand new season, and of the 11 teams in Major League Rugby, 3 of them had no match at all. That's more than 25% of your entire league not playing in week 2 of the season. All of these teams are no doubt chomping at the bit. They're wanting to play. They want to be involved and to build momentum going into the new season. Get used to new teammates. As I say, there's a high level of turnover and change within these squads from year to year. Lots of players leaving teams, lots of players joining new teams. You want to integrate them together as quickly as you can, and the best way of doing that is playing rugby matches. And yet, there's only 4 fixtures this weekend. Normally there would be 5, at least another 2 teams playing. Like, surely it makes sense to get as many teams and as many matches played as early in the season as you can. Or am I just an idiot? I don't think so. I might be, but I don't think so. Related to that are the fixtures that San Diego Legion have been dealt with. I know this is all drawn by computer, and like it's probably not deliberate or targeted at them in any way. It's just unfortunate the way it's worked out, but it's really, really weird. Like, yeah, they've started the season with 3 away games, away to Seattle in round 1. That's okay. I mean, it's a full trip up the west coast from basically the Mexican border to the Canadian border, but you know, it's a long way to go, but at least they're on the same side of the country. Then in week 2, from Sunday to Friday, had to go across to the east coast to play Anthem in North Carolina, to then come back to San Diego, presumably for a week of training, before they then go back to the east coast to play Old Glory DC on Saturday. Like, it's a ridiculous amount of strain on travel and all the issues that brings environmentally and so on and so forth. Or are these players going from Seattle direct to Charlotte or North Carolina or some base on the East Coast where they'll stay for the full week to play both of these 2 games against Anthem and against Old Glory? Like, even still, that's a full week away out of their normal training pattern, out of their normal training facilities, away from their homes, away from their families. It surely cannot be an ideal way to start the season. And I'm not saying they should have home games all the time, but presumably it shouldn't have to be going coast to coast 3 weeks running and with quick turnarounds in that first week. It just seems really strange, really unfortunate, but surely there's something you could do about it. Flip a fixture so that they're home for one and travel away later in the season. The scheduling doesn't seem very good, and leagues and World Rugby make a lot of noise about player welfare and doing their best to protect the players, and surely scheduling fixtures like that with so much travel cannot be good for the players, cannot be good for the squad, you wouldn't think. Anyway, another one that's more funny than anything else. I noticed that last season, even though I wasn't podcasting about MLR last season, I noticed that I laughed a lot. And it's the Los Angeles badge, emblem, team logo, call it what you will. It's hilarious. It looks like a penis. Yeah, it's quite funny seeing all these players running around with what looks like a big dick on their shirt. And yes, it's silly. Yes, it's infantile. But I'm really glad they got rid of that purple shirt they had last year, because that looked even worse with the big purple dick on it. So yes, it's a bit shit. Please get a new badge. Like, there's so much they could have done. So many different configurations of the letters L and A that they could have worked out together. But yeah, rounding the top of the A as it overlaps with the L just looks like the head of a penis. And it's very, very funny. Right. Last one is a serious one, again, on our drizzling shit list. And it is the scrum laws, or the new scrum laws, or anti-scrum laws that MLR has introduced this season. I said at the top of the show that I am a fully paid up member of the front row union. I am a hooker who has also played both loose head and tight head prop, and just about every other position on the pitch. But now, in the latter years of my career, I am a front row player. The scrum is the symbol of rugby. You see it in every single piece of media, in advertising, anything that is using rugby as a backdrop or an image or a feature always contains a scrum, because it is instantly recognizable as, okay, this game is rugby. It's the only, or one of few things that's completely unique to the sport of rugby union. We won't talk about league scrums because they might as well not exist, frankly. But the union scrum is the symbol of this sport. So why is Major League Rugby in particular, they say that it's a World Rugby directive, but nobody else in the world is using or getting rid of scrums in quite the same way that MLR is. Why are they so desperate to get rid of the one thing that is unique about our sport, and everybody, whether they're a rugby fan or not, thinks is fucking cool? I was really wound up by a social media post from MLR and the Rugby Network that was put out this week, crowing that their new laws hadn't actually reduced the number of scrums in round one of MLR compared to the average from last season, roughly 14 scrums per game. Like, yeah, okay. But it was also week one of the season when all the teams are playing and they've not played very much rugby together, and there were so many handling errors, so many knock-ons, which automatically lead to scrums. There were very, very few instances where the new scrum laws actually came into effect, or the new anti-scrum laws came into effect, where players cannot choose to scrum from a knock-on or a forward pass into touch. They have to play the line out, whereas previously, or in the rest of the world, they have the option of a scrum or a line out. No option for a scrum from a free kick. No option to choose a scrum from a penalty won at a scrum, so you cannot scrum again. So yeah, none of those circumstances really took place. There were just loads and loads of knock-ons in week 1. I need to thank James Dealey of MLR Stats for coming with some information for me today. In round 2 of MLR 2025, the number of scrums per game had come down from 14 in round 1 to 8.5 scrums per game in round 2. That's almost half the number of scrums. Rugby is supposed to be a game for all shapes and sizes. If you get rid of the scrum, which, as I said, is already the iconic kind of symbol and unique thing about our game that everybody loves, whether they watch rugby or not, it's also where the big boys play. If you get rid of the scrum, you remove a whole load of specialist skills that are involved for front row and second row players particularly, but also the skills of back row forwards, particularly number 8s, to control the ball with the feet as they're moving forward, as they're driving. To keep control of all of that is really quite difficult, and it's a very specific skill set that will be lost and removed from the game if the scrum goes. If you remove the scrum, you remove all those specialist skills, but you also remove, say, the big boys from the game, and you end up with a whole team that looks like a rugby league team where all the players more or less have the same physique, the same build. They're all, 6'3" and 220 pounds, and they're all ripped. Yeah, they're all the same. There's no variety, and that's one of the great things about rugby union, is that there's a place for everyone. It's the game for everyone. And to lose that for, I don't know what the justification is. Doesn't seem to be any real reason for that. It just seems nonsensical as far as I'm concerned, and I don't understand why you would do it. Furthermore, at an international level, it's going to do the Eagles absolutely no favours at all either. They'll have a completely depowered scrum because they won't be used to scrummaging as much as we see in other nations. You look at the best teams in the world right now. South Africa, dominant forward pack, great scrummaging team. France, great scrummaging team, great forward pack. Ireland, again, very dominant in the scrum. England, New Zealand, traditionally also a strong scrummaging team, despite the silky skills of the backs. They can all play rugby, but the forward pack can scrum and do the dirty work as well. And the Eagles need that to be able to compete. Argentina, another one in the Americas. Like, the scrum is still a weapon in this game. Removing it for the US is only going to weaken them further when it comes to facing top-tier opposition in the build-up to World Cups in 2027, and especially 2031, when, say, the US are hosting. You want to be able to compete at that top level, and removing such a core aspect of the game that so many teams are good at and recognise the value of isn't going to do your chances any good. So, yeah. Basically, the MLR anti-scrum laws are the drizzling shit, and I will end my rant there before I start getting mad. And we'll move on to shit hot, the good shit, to finish up with. And hopefully I'll cheer up a little bit. So yeah, shit hot stuff from last week, or from round 2 of MLR, and yeah, the last week of rugby union. I'm going to start off with Sam Tuifua's acrobatic finish in the corner for the Houston Sabercats to come back into the game against Los Angeles. Absolutely ridiculous bit of skill from a big man. On the subject of big men scoring tries, got to give a shout out to Justice Sears Duru, San Diego Legion prop, going airborne to score against Anthem. Big old dive from the big man. Prop taking flight. I love it. Good work, Big Justice. Also cool name. Also, another good thing from this week, all the teams in Major League Rugby have finally played a game. I know it's week 2, there's always a team with a bye, but yes, odd number of teams doesn't help, so I'm glad that we've finally got to see every team in the league at least once. And there's a lot more games to come next weekend. So that is also a good thing. And to finish up, we've said it plenty already in this show, but Dylan Fawsitt's 100th cap, that's shit hot. Good work, Dylan. Obviously, it won't be long until he's joined by other members of the Century Club, but he's the first one. Nobody will ever take that record away from him, and it is very, very well deserved. What were your shitlist contenders from this last week? Please let me know in the comments, again, on Spotify, on YouTube, or get in touch on the social media at All American Rugby Pod on Instagram. I would love to hear your thoughts on this, and I will also be asking for your input for this topic for next week. I'll be doing it ahead of time. I did put something out today before recording, but I'll try and do it a day in advance of recording next time around, so that you have a chance to get your voice or your opinion heard on the show, because it would be really, really great to get more voices and more listener input, and to give you a chance to say the things that you want to say about things that are happening in American rugby and MLR as the season goes on. So yeah, please get in touch, because I want to get your contributions into this show. So, as I've said, the best place to get in touch with us or to keep up with us is on our Instagram at All American Rugby Pod. That's the only social media we have. So, yeah, if you have an Instagram account, please be sure to follow us on there if you want to keep up with things that we're doing. And as I said, I'll post stuff on there to give you the opportunity to be involved in the podcast as well. Otherwise, you can subscribe to us on YouTube at All American Rugby Pod on there as well. You can leave your comments on our videos about your feelings, and I'll try and collate as much of that as I can if you have shitlist nominations, and so on and so forth, because it is always great to hear your thoughts on things. If you listen on an audio-only podcast platform, that is equally brilliant. Please consider subscribing on whatever platform you use, and if you are on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, please be so kind as to leave us a 5-star rating, and if you can, a positive review. That would be fantastic as well. Not only does it make me feel good about myself and about doing this show for you, but it actually genuinely does make a difference in terms of getting more eyes and ears on the podcast as well. And that's really what it's all about, spreading the love and appreciation for MLR and American rugby. If you could do that, I would be very, very grateful for it. But yeah, I think that'll do it for this week. Round 2 of MLR is in the can. So is this episode of the All American Rugby Podcast. Thank you very much for listening, and I will talk to you next time. Cheers for now.